Day one. The thing I liked about this discussion about strengths and working with other people of similar strengths was that if we're aware of the strengths that we have, then we can be aware of how we can make productive teams in the workplace. We can know which people we will build off of with their strengths and what people we can complement where their strengths are not what our strengths are. Day two. The most interesting thing I thought about this class was our discussion about where we grew up and how that was in terms of kind of the recreational aspect of the cities that we lived in. I'm from Dallas, Texas, and so it was interesting to think about the communities that were affected by just the surroundings. And one thing I thought about was the parks, and that Dallas could, in fact, have more open parks for people. Day three. This was an interesting class because it's something that I personally struggle with, judging other people. So it's interesting to talk about how we judge people by their appearance. And one thing that I realize that I do a lot is judge people by their athletic ability, for example, and I don't think highly of them because of their lack thereof, or vice versa. And so that's one thing that I decided that I want to work on. Day four. I really like this class because we discussed work environments, and I found that I myself am very favored towards relaxed work environments where it's just kind of a chill environment, and you can kind of go about at your own pace doing the work as long as you get the work done. And I've had jobs like that, and they've been very enjoyable and relaxing and very not stressful as well. Day five. This was an interesting class because we talked about extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation, and I was able to, having learned about those two motivations, analyze what motivates me to work and go to school and develop as a person. And it was interesting to see that I am very extrinsically motivated when it comes to school, just to get the grades, just to get through the school, and as opposed to intrinsically. Day six. I really enjoyed this class because we talked about being busy. And one thing that I like to do myself is be busy and always engaged in something that's productive. And sometimes I take that to an extreme and I'm always working on homework or work or a personal project. But I was reminded that another productive way to go about life is building and fostering the relationships around us. Day seven. This was an interesting class because we talked about the book that was written about Gen Z, and we talked about the claims that were made about what would be my generation. And I didn't think that the way that they were explained in class were very solidified. They seemed very blanketed statements, and so it was interesting to hear, but I did take it with a grain of salt, just knowing that I didn't have all the context around those claims. Day eight. I was very interested by the idea of the entropic family. I was intrigued because I could see how, and I've probably experienced how, if you don't put forth a lot of effort towards your family and growing the bonds within the family and between its members, the entropic family will, I guess, be given rise within the family, and it'll kind of just fall apart, fall to pieces, and slowly fade away those bonds. Day nine. This was an interesting class because it talked about how we are maybe getting farther and farther away from being natural people out in nature a lot outside, and more centered around being inside and on technology, inferring that we might, or implying that we might be the last child in the woods. It made me evaluate what I like to do and what I enjoy to do, and I still like to be outside, which is good to know that I get out for fun and do things. Day 10. The experience economy was an interesting topic because it helped me understand the levels and tiers that go into having a successful experience with a certain product or a certain event. And it was interesting to learn about the steps that you can take that will guarantee or improve the probability that you'll have one of those successful experiences or events. Day 11 was interesting because we got to dive into the steps to making a successful experience even more. Um, and it was interesting to learn about the acronym theme and how you can follow those steps. They're kind of generic, not too specific, so they adapt to different experiences, and you can follow those steps to ensure that the users of your experience have a really good one and that those memories last. Day 12 was very interesting because it relates directly to what I'd like to get into as a career, being user experience design. And so it's interesting to learn, especially about Shimano and the bicycles that they created based off of essentially user feedback. They were able to diagnose the problem based on the feedback from the users and then address the problem after they had enough knowledge about what the problem was, and they were able to have a successful product. Day 13. I thought this was an interesting class because we talked about mind mapping, and I think that concept is very interesting. I think one benefit from mind mapping is being able to tie two seemingly unrelated ideas together through other relations that relate back to one another, and so you can get 2 points that seem far away and connect them to be closer. Day 14 was very interesting. I wasn't there for the whole time in the class, but the idea of bringing students that work in experience design back to share with us about what they do and how they start businesses and their careers was very interesting. I was very intrigued by the kolache woman that spoke about how she started up and now has like 4 or 5 other kolache places.